I am Dr. Kim Sage. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This video today is going to be breaking down a lot of the things I was talking about in the videos I posted a while ago on how to heal your anxious and avoidant and disorganized attachment wounds. So we're going to start going into a series specifically around attachment, and then I'm going to occasionally drop in videos just around a general tie-in between attachment and childhood wounds, as they might relate to having really complicated or complex experiences and types of parents. So this topic is really going to tie in just naturally the things that often create the different types of childhood traumas and attachment wounds that we see in different attachment styles. If you're new here, please consider subscribing and checking that little box, and that way you'll get notified when I post new videos, and I would love to see you become part of this growing community. Also, really quickly, please know that if you are someone who grew up in a really complicated childhood dynamic, this really is a great place for you to discover more about yourself, how to heal, deal with relationships, both inward and outward, and hopefully to help you understand the link between what happened to you in childhood and oftentimes what you might struggle with today. And as a result of me doing this work for so long and being so truly passionate about it, I have created a couple courses, actually 3. One is a free course. Please check those links out down below. Okay, so we're going to start with really number 1 in the video that you will see on my page, which is about how to heal anxious attachment. I think I went through 14 or 15 different steps, and so I'm going to make videos about each one of those steps, and in each one of those videos around anxious, disorganized, and avoidant attachment. At least that's my plan. We'll see how it goes. So in the first part of this video, we're going to focus just really quickly on what anxious attachment is. And remember that this is an attachment style that is really about inconsistency and overexposure to the parent's state of mind and mood. What does that mean? That means that these parents often struggle with timing. So they might try to help a child's emotions situation, their emotional regulation, in some way, but they misread it, they missed it, the timing was just off. The parents were gone a lot. There's a lot of reasons why a child might experience a parent's anxious attachment as inconsistency. It could also be, and it is very common, that these parents did have their own anxieties, and oftentimes they were more fear-based type parents. So they knew how to handle fear, and so they would respond really well. They often can be parents who maybe didn't mean to, but made you overly afraid of bad things happening to you. And we're talking about your main attachment system, your main person here, but also remember that we have, I believe, a main style, and then we can lean into other styles based on the relationship with the other person. And we also have secondary and I think tertiary attachment figures in our lives. So, but what I'm talking about is the very earliest 0 to under 3 or 4, really the core of attachment theory. But it could be that, hi Coco, she just went to the vet, so it could be that you also had a great experience, but then a parent left or the parents divorced and there was a disruption in your attachment. So it isn't just those early years, as I'm saying, but that's the core, and then it plays out more and more as time goes on. So the inconsistency can happen for many reasons. These parents were not well attuned at times, they were inconsistent, they were unresponsive at times, but not always, right? So it was a little harder to understand, what was going to happen or not in terms of getting your needs met. And really important that these parents, because of their anxieties and fears and perhaps their own difficulty with boundaries in some way, and it just happens. And remember, with these parents, it happens in ways that they don't necessarily want it to happen. You're not trying to be anxious to your child or trying to overly share what's happening in your life. But the overexposure to the parent's state of mind means that the parent's emotions spilled over too often to the child. So that could be from oversharing, oh, daddy's mad at me, or I'm mad at daddy or mommy or whoever the parent is, or just being on the phone. Let's say multitasking was also an issue for this style. So for example, the parent might be having a baby on the hip, unloading the dishwasher, and on the phone telling their best friend, how upset they are, or just chit-chatting, and we all have done that, like 100%. It's just that when it happens again and again and again, the child less often than not was made to feel seen and heard more consistently, right? But let's say you're on the phone really like angry at your spouse while you're holding this baby. Remember that your tone of voice, your energy, like all of that is affecting your child. Even if they don't have language, they are reading and attuning in and out to their neuroception, I should say, more than attunement. The inside and outside of their body, their nervous system is reading you. And so remember, as I always say, your nervous system matches your attachment system, right? You have to learn to figure out, okay, mommy or daddy or parent has this style of attachment and this type of tendencies in terms of their nervous system, their body, like they're always in fight or flight. Or maybe they're super depressed and shut down. So as a baby, I have to figure out how to kind of respond to that to be most inclined to get my needs met. So that is the heart of that over-reading everyone else, being a caretaker, being often a people pleaser. This style has a really great fear base around abandonment, around rejection. And if you think about it, like I just described, it makes, I think, a lot of sense. So that's the core. There's this overexposure, and we're going to talk more about that. And that can often, really lean into parentification. But the bottom line is we don't know how to identify our own needs because we have learned to always start with, for the most part, reading everyone else's mood and mind first. So they need to be okay, then we can be okay. And we often also get a sense of like satisfaction and meaning and reward out of taking care of others' needs. So much so that we often lose sight of and don't know how to connect to, well, what do I feel about this? What do I need? What do I want? And so these are 10 questions to ask yourself. There are so many more, but just to get started in helping yourself understand what would be a way to start shifting away from always focusing on everyone else. So that is the core, to identify your own needs. And so number 1 is, in what areas of my life am I taking good care of myself? This is a tough one, I know, but ask yourself that. Number 2, in what areas would I like to improve honoring my needs and wants and beliefs? Notice I didn't say fix it because it's a process. But if you just started to say, okay, I need to shift into taking care of myself too, what places might that be? That's really the second question. Number 3, what parts of my life make me feel like I'm good enough? Where do I feel good enough? Not perfect, not terrible, and try as much as you can to be objective. I know many of us have a very low sense of self, and we can say, well, I suck at everything, but that is not the goal here. To try to honestly assess, how are you doing in other parts of your life where you're doing okay? And you're feeling like, okay, I need to work on accepting that good enough is good enough. And I would say parenting for sure. There's no such thing as perfection in parenting. If you can get close to good enough, you are doing good enough, right? Number 4 is, what parts of my life feel lonely or empty? So we're looking in now to see where else do I need to maybe, explore and do some work. Number 5, what would need to be different for those parts of me to change? Meaning the parts of me which are lonely or sad or empty. Remember, we have all kinds of parts. I can be grateful in one part and feel envious or jealous of someone else in another part. I can be content in one part of my life and really lonely in another, right? That parts where it can be really helpful. Okay, number 6, what is one thing, just one thing I could start to do each day to improve my self-care or honoring my needs and wants? And I've literally said this even last week, that sometimes all it is this one thing is something like getting a bigger glass of water, getting a glass of water once during the day, trying to eat lunch because the person maybe skips their entire meal all day long, trying to add vegetables to my dinner one night a week. Like it literally is just one thing. And the reason why it's one thing is because I think if you don't start small, you are so, less inclined to follow through. It feels so big. So just one thing. Number 7, what one thing brings me joy that I would like to do more of? Just one thing. And then what can I try to do that thing, whatever it is, at least once a month? That's it, once a month. Maybe it's getting a massage. Maybe it's taking a walk in the park. One thing once a month to start. Remember, our whole goal is to start to identify the places where we need to focus on ourselves. But if we overload ourselves with our tendencies to caretake, it's not going to work. Number 9, do I say I'm fine or no thank you to something I would really like to do? Why? Why might I do that? And what would need to change for me to say yes? And lastly, what boundaries would I need to put in place if I want to say no to something? What would they be? And in my course on healing and dealing with borderline or narcissistic parents, I have a whole section and journal part on boundaries. Your health boundaries, your emotional boundaries, your body boundaries, everything you can think of, the things you'll talk about or won't talk about. And so oftentimes we just because we're so anxious and want to make everyone okay, we struggle with just saying, you know what, that's a no for me. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not going to do that. And so saying it or putting the boundary in place is one thing, but then what would it take to maintain that boundary? For example, if I want to not have negative conversations with a friend, I might work on not bringing up things every conversation that I know are going to take us down a negative path for that person. Not because I don't want to support them, but because every time I have the phone call, I end up feeling like crap afterwards, and I don't want to feel that way. So I want to be a good, loving, supportive friend, but sometimes I want to be mindful of what I go down, what roads I go down. Or I might want to say to them when they say, hey, what's going on with that thing, that one thing that is notoriously crappy in my life, I might say, you know what? Thank you so much for asking, but I would really just rather not discuss that today. Do you mind? I only have a little bit of time and I want to hear how you're doing, or I want to share this other thing with you. I mean, certainly if you are watching this channel and you have had some kind of really wounding, complicated types of parents, it can be almost impossible to imagine setting and holding and implementing boundaries. And we're going to get to that in other videos with those parents. But that is really the heart of it. If you are doing this work, but you are not changing the relationships that trigger you and have wounded you, it is very, very difficult to make long-term progress. So that is it for today's video. I hope you anxious, lovey people found it helpful. And if you're an avoid person watching this, or disorganized, you relate to at least part of it, or your partner is, or you want to understand it, or just yourself, I think it's so important to understand that we didn't create these wounds, but it is really our responsibility to try to heal them in whatever ways we can. And it's not always easy, I know that. So thank you so much for being here. Please stay safe and well, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.